Your 2026 goals will fail if you do this. Repeat the same loop you did last year and the year before with your goal setting, or don't set goals at all. Now, before you switch off because you think goal setting is boring because it's a dry subject, or you think you know how to goal set, I've got a question for you. How's that working for you? Probably something along the lines of you start off strong, life gets busy, motivation drops, and then quietly you go back to your old habits. Not because you're lazy, not because you're like discipline. It's because you haven't got a system in place to succeed. So in this video, I'm going to show you the 5 critical mistakes people make that cause drift and cause them to fall off the bandwagon, and an evidence-based goal-setting framework that I use with myself and my clients that's based on behavior change psychology. My name's Carl Simpson, and for the last 7 years, I've been working with high-performing business owners, professionals to rebuild their energy and consistency with healthy habits, even when life doesn't slow down. Now, consistency is an issue for a lot of you. How do I know this? Well, every time I speak to someone in my DMs, 9 times out of 10, that's the main topic. Now, a lot of you think consistency is a goal. That's incorrect. Consistency is the vehicle that gets you from A to B. How can you be consistent if you don't know what fucking B is? There's no point trying to change behaviors just for the sake of it, because change is hard. And your unconscious brain wants to keep you safe and away from pain. So if you don't have clear, set, detailed goals, it's going to be so much easier for you to slip and fall off the bandwagon. Now, a good example of this is my client, George. Okay, he owns a tech company that does business worldwide. Switched on, good at what he does, used to pressure. But when he first came to me, his energy was rock bottom and he stacked on a little bit of weight. So after our initial coaching call, I sent him away with a task, what I call my vision planning. The way I do this is the framework that I'm about to show you. He set his long-term goals first, which was between 3 and 5 years, using what I call the 5 pillars of life: finance, mindset, health, family, and fun. Now, the reason I do this is because most business owners and professionals are one-dimensional. They're hyper-focused on business for good reasons. Okay, it's their bread and butter, it's their life force. It's what they use to support their families, which is good for money and good for the people. But we've all heard stories about the friend who got divorced because he was spending too much time at work for so long, or their health has took a nosedive because they were too focused on business and not looking after themselves because they didn't have the time, or because they thought looking after themselves was selfish, which is, again, incorrect. Anyway, back to George. So after he set his long-term goals, his 3 to 5 year goals, I then got him to break his goal down into year targets and then 90-day sprints, because that aligns with business quarters, Q1 to 4. So our second coaching call comes along. I asked for feedback on how he felt after the task, which he replied, "Well, it's hard. I mean, I do this all the time with business, but I've never done this for my life, my personal development." So I replied, "Good. It's supposed to be hard because it's your life and it means something. But without a plan of attack, you are leaving results to hope. And hope is not an effective strategy. You wouldn't leave your business to hope. So why would you leave hope, your business, your personal development goals to hope? It means you don't care." So one of the things that I've took out of the military, one of the sayings is, fail to prepare and prepare to fail. Sounds cheesy, but it's true. And right here is a nucleus of preparation. It's ground zero for consistency, because if you don't get this foundation set properly, then it's going to crumble when stress hits. So grab a pen and paper, or you can download the worksheet The link is in the description, and let's start prepping the right way. So the framework that I use is track. Yes, sounds cheesy, but it's cool. All right. Think about it as keeping yourself on track. So the first T is 2 paths. Now, one of the main errors people do with goal settings is basically motivation decays without emotional contrast. Okay. So urgency disappears once the initial New Year drive of motivation fades. Now, everyone always thinks about setting what they want to achieve. I call this heaven. But what people don't do is they don't think of the contrast of hell. Basically, what it's like to stay in the same position as you are now. Now, a lot of people say that I'm happy maintaining. I think that's bullshit. And if you look in nature, there's only growth and contribution. When you fail to grow, when you fail to contribute, just like nature, you begin to decay and die. So when you're setting your goals, you should also have this contrast in the back of your mind. What's going to happen if I don't achieve heaven? What's going to happen in 5 years when my health's 10 times worse than it is now? When my energy still sucks and rock bottom? And when I've not paid attention to the relationships that I want to? That's what most people, deep down, that's what their fears are. Now, it's all well and good having these 2 paths, but what a lot of people do is they don't get into the details. So when you are setting your 3 to 5 year goals, which is where this starts, okay, we start forward, we project forward, and then chunk backwards. We need to think about what it's going to feel like to achieve what we want to achieve. What mindset do I need to have? What beliefs do I need to have? What actions do I need to take and have in place? What non-negotiables do I need? It's almost like you are defining a new identity of yourself, which sounds a bit harsh, but it's true. Because goal setting isn't about achieving the goal. It's about who you become in the pursuit of that goal. It's the standards that you rise achieving that goal. So that's Tango, 2 paths, okay? Heaven and hell, and getting really deep on the details for those 2. Next one is Romeo, results defined. So now that we've got this heaven, this vision, this compelling version of ourselves that we're working towards, we need to know how to get there. And again, detail matters. So this is where you're going to break it down into 90 days. What are the results that I need over the year, over 90 days, that will basically act as a piece of the puzzle to get to my future version, my future vision of myself? And again, things that we need to think about is mindset, beliefs, actions. But also we need a deadline. So there's something in psychology called open loop fatigue. Okay. And this is what happens when people set vague, wishy-washy goals that don't have deadlines. That's why I like to use the 90-day sprint, because you've got a deadline. Now, you might not achieve the goal, the 90-day goal, in that time span, but that's not the point. The point is you have got a specific window to focus. Because if you don't, then it could take you for ages, and you're constantly thinking about something else, which for business owners and high professionals, you don't need to think about another thing constantly. So once you've got something set, details, structure, deadline, and then attack, which comes onto my third letter, which is alpha, actions. So we've got a 90-day sprint set up. We've got our 90-day targets. We then chunk down even further to the daily habits, because it's the daily habits that win the war long term. These daily actions, and again, it depends on what it is you want to achieve. So, for example, for mindset, it might be something along the lines of you might want to meditate for 5 minutes, or you might want to work or read a book for 5 minutes. For your health, it could be going out for a walk for 10 minutes in the morning. Whatever it is, it needs to be simple so that when you haven't got time, when work ramps up, you can smash forward and attack it still. It needs to bring an ROI. It needs to bring the best ROI that you can get from the activity. So if you're doing something just for the sake of it and you're not getting anything in return, then that needs to be changed. Because time is something that you guys haven't got a lot of. It's the one thing that we can't get back is time. We can always make more money. We can't make more time. And it needs to be stress-proof. What a lot of people do, especially in the new year, they go straight to 10. They change the diet, they change their lifestyle, they start meditating, they start reading books again, they start going to the gym. Sometimes people start going to the gym twice in a day. Don't need to do that, right? Unless you want to train to be some sort of performance athlete, you don't need to do that. Which is fine for 4 weeks. You can sustain that for 4 weeks, but can you sustain that when you've got client dinners? Can you sustain that when you're traveling, when you're on the road? Probably not. So you need to think a worst case scenario and build a plan into that. So then when the worst case scenario happens, you've also almost rehearsed it. Next, Charlie, conflicts. Now, what are conflicts? Basically beliefs, mindset, contrary to what you say you want. Now, I see this all the time. People doing things out of their core values. When you do things out of your core values, you procrastinate, you hesitate, and you don't get the job done. A lot of people are living inside other people's values, from passed down by your parents or your partners, your spouse. And if you can't chase a goal that is linked to your values, that's where it becomes a problem. And that's where most people fall down, because especially when it comes to health and fitness, other things always take priority. But the thing is, your health, your fitness, your energy, you are your driving force of your inner circle. You're the driving force of your business, your team. So if your energy slips, that's going to have a massive impact on your work, on your family, and it's just going to snowball and snowball. A lot of you are already in that position. We need to bring these conflicting beliefs, conflicting mindsets into the spotlight. We need to name them, and we need to get them out in the open so that we can face them head on. Because once you can see it, you can then plan around it. So, for example, you might get to a position where you're internally conflicted. If you've got a workaround point for that to happen, an action on, if you like, a contingency plan, then that's going to be a lot easier to deal with when those barriers come along. Last but not least, okay, this is super important. This is why most of you fall off the bandwagon. Spoiler alert, there's no such thing as a bandwagon. You don't just suddenly fall off it. You choose to go back to your old habits. Mainly because you forgot who you said you would be. Mainly because your subconscious is working against your level 2 thinking. So we have different types of thinking, level 1, level 2, because it wants to keep you safe. So this is where visualization, and I'm not talking about meditating visualization, all right, before you go off. I'm talking about what can you do to remind yourself of the goal visually, because the language of your unconscious brain isn't words, it's emotions, it's visuals, it's patterns. So this is where things like vision boards come in. Okay, if you're sat in an environment which is constantly reminding you and bringing your goals into focus, that's how you keep it alive. That's how you keep reminding yourself to do things. Not consciously, but subconsciously. Also, this is where journaling comes in as well, if that's something that you enjoy doing at work. Now, I used to be a big disliker of journaling. I thought it was for like 14-year-old girls in school until I actually started doing it and I actually started getting the benefit for it. The reason why journaling works is that you're putting pen to paper and you're visually reminding yourself every single day or every week. This is why having check-ins works when we're talking about coaching. But it's also why people fall off and regain weight, is because they stop doing things. They stop weighing themselves. They stop measuring themselves. They stop doing the things that keeps them accountable to themselves. So that's the track method. Hopefully you got a lot out of that. Let me just get rid of this. So just to recap, reiterate, one of the main things, main problems with people achieving goals is their system isn't set for success. Okay. Consistency is not a goal. It is the driving force to get you from A to B. If you haven't achieved your goals in the past, it's not because you lack discipline. It's not because you didn't want it badly enough. It's because the goal wasn't aligned and wasn't designed to work with how human behavior actually functions. Because we all know motivation fades. Vague outcomes drain energy. Vague goals drain energy. Pressure will always expose conflicts. And what isn't reinforced will disappear. That's not personal failure. It's predictable psychology. The difference in 2026 isn't setting bigger goals, but it's creating a system that is bulletproof and that makes goals inevitable.